Call to order of the Watertown City Council for January 3rd of 2022. Please rise while we have Carl Van Vorst from Hope for Life Church lead us in prayer to begin our council meeting.
Mayor Holeen and council members and other community leaders, just appreciate your work for our community, and we as citizens certainly appreciate what you all do and trying to make our city the best it can be, and that's pretty neat. And as we begin a new year, this being the first business day of the year and your first business meeting, I think it's good if we go to the Word, Psalm 37. We read just a couple of verses here where it says, "Trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and feed on his faithfulness. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. He shall bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him." So let's pray. Dear Lord God, again, we just thank you for this city, the city of Watertown, and Lord, we especially thank you for the leaders who are willing to step up and lead us as a community, Lord. And Father, we just pray that you will grant them wisdom, help them with all the tasks that fall their way, Lord. And Father, may they just find joy in their work as well. And Lord, we just pray for Dan Shuddy, who is ill tonight. We just pray that your hand of healing would rest on him and that you would nurture him back to good health. So Father, be with us as a community and help us to all make good decisions and help us to support each other, and may your love reign among us, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen.
Finance Officer Bob Zine, will you please call the roll?
Okay. Bueller? Here. Danforth? Here. Holeen?
Here.
Paulson? Here. Shuddy? Absent. Tupper?
Here.
Billhauer?
Here.
Thank you.
Quorum established. As is noted, Councilman Shuddy is sick and unable to attend either in person or online, so our prayers are definitely with him, and he will be marked as excused for tonight. With that, the chair will accept a motion for approval of tonight's consent agenda. So moved by Councilman Paulson, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Any comments on that? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now is the time for our public comments section. If anyone is here to speak about something that is not on the agenda but would like to mention it to the council, now is the time to do so. Just come up to the front and make sure that the light is on and introduce yourself and make brief comments. Thank you.
My name is Scott Thompson. I'm a property owner on 3rd Avenue. I understand there's a sidewalk going through there with the street that's being redone from the river to 3rd Street. 2 meetings ago, I guess you guys passed a resolution to move forward with that or something. I've been talking with Dan and Mayor Holeen about the sidewalk. A lot of the property owners would like to see the sidewalk moved closer to the road. They're proposing to put it in 14 feet off the back of the curb. And a lot of the building owners, especially to the east of me, are only 14 feet from the back of the curb to the buildings, and they're concerned about how close the sidewalk is gonna be to their to their house, or their business. And we're also concerned about the cost of the sidewalk. It's my understanding that the sidewalk costs $16 a foot to have it installed. We don't understand why the property owner would have to pay for $12 of that and the city only cover $4. It seems kind of unfair that it isn't at least a 50-50 deal. This is property that isn't a new development. It's been around for 200 years and there's never been a sidewalk there before. But if we can get the sidewalk moved closer to the road and see if we can get the cost lowered a little bit, that would be helpful. So that's why I'm here.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Is that enough for you tonight?
That's all my concerns, yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
With public comments being over, the chair will entertain a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda. With one change. We are going to strike item I because I and J are the same and I prefer the letter J. So we're going to strike I. And then Councilman Tupper, or Councilman Paulson, you have something to say?
Yes, I would like to recuse myself on item F.
All right. With that, the motion is made by Councilman Tupper. Need a second? Seconded by Councilman Paulson. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Item A is the application for a transfer of ownership and location of a retail malt beverage South Dakota Farm and Wine video lottery license from No. 1 Casino to Loggers. With that, we'll open public hearing by going to our finance officer, Kristen Bobzine. Or more information first, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Before the council is a transfer of ownership. This will transfer ownership from No. 1 Casino to Loggers. The location will actually be in the old Sparky's location. So this one is already approved in standards for the location. So if there's any questions, I can try to answer them. Everything was noticed too in the paper, so thank you.
Thank you very much. The chair will open a public hearing and open it up for anyone who wants to testify in favor of this. The chair is aware that there are people here in the audience who are able to answer questions if any of them arise, but they don't feel that they need to testify if they don't need to. So with that said, the chair will keep that option open for answering questions after the public hearing. Anyone here to testify in favor? Anyone to testify against? I'll close the hearing and open it up for council action. Is there a motion to approve the application?
So moved.
Made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Danforth. Any comments on that, Council? Councilman Tupper.
I do. I know there's a reason for it, but if you go to that from A to B, my guess is it has something to do with the video lottery license. And evidently you got more than one video lottery license. Is that the reason for the transfer?
Yes.
Please, if you want to answer, please come up and identify yourself so that people who are watching know who.
Kevin Solheim. I'm the owner of No. 1 Casino and partner in the Sparky's Bar building.
Okay.
Yeah, I have 2 video lottery licenses at No. 1 Casino, and we've been trying to sell the building, and the buyer would like a video lottery license, so I didn't foresee where I was going to expand or open anything new, so I sold it with the building.
Okay. That answers my question. I knew there was.
And that's why I'm applying for another to have the off-sale beer license. That's the next item, so
Yep.
I'll take care of everything in one shot.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments, Council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the application. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Item B is an application for a new retail malt beverage and South Dakota Farm license to No. 1 Casino. For more information, we'll go to our Finance Officer, Kristen Bobzine.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, this will actually be a new retail on-off for number one casino, same location. What this allows for is the actual off sale, because their current license without this wouldn't be able to have off sale of malt beverage. So again, notice was given in the paper and everything's in order. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I will open a public hearing and ask if anyone is here to testify in favor. Anyone testify against? I'll close the public hearing and open up for council action. Is there a motion to approve the application? Made by Councilman Beeler, seconded by Councilman Vilhauer. Any comments on this? Comments or questions? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the application. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item C is a second reading of Ordinance 21-46, a redrawing of Ward A and Ward C as a result of population changes identified in the 2020 census. For more information, we will go to our City Attorney, Matt Roby.
Thank you, Mayor. As the title indicates, this is the second reading. The council had heard this as a first reading at the last meeting. And as a result of the 2020 census, it was there was an identified deviation, a deviation more than what federal law would allow in the number of folks in each ward in the city. So the first district worked with us and proposed a solution for that. And the simple solution is to remove a portion of Ward A and convert that portion into Ward C. And this reading here would, or this ordinance amendment would do just that.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Councilman Vilhauer.
I just want to clarify, just want to make sure that these citizens or residents, they have been made aware of this change, or they will be made aware of?
Yes, Councilman.
Okay.
They, if this passes this evening, we will make them aware.
Okay.
Yep.
So that when they go to vote, they'll know where to go. And okay, thank you.
All right, the chair, Councilman Tupper. Actually, before more questions, can I get a motion to approve the redrawing of the
I'll make
wards? Made by Councilman Vilhauer, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Okay, now Councilman Tupper, thank you very much for your patience.
City Attorney Roby, I think we covered this during the first reading. I think the question come up, but just verify that for me. Will these people automatically be, their voter registration automatically go into these different wards then, or do they have to register?
So with this process, once this is approved, then we'll let the county know, the auditor's office, and all these locations then would be changed per the ward map. So yep, it'll all be taken care of.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the redrawing of the wards. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item D is a first reading of Ordinance 21-47, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 5.02, Flood Damage Prevention of the Ordinances of Watertown. We will go to our Community Development Manager, Stacy Bungard. I'm sorry I butchered that, Stacy.
Oh, that's just fine. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, council members. So this is a very straightforward ordinance amendment that you have in front of you this evening for first reading. What this does is provide some clarity in Chapter 5, which is the flood damage prevention chapter. And currently, we do have a requirement for everything to be elevated to a minimum of 1 foot above the base flood elevation, and that's known as the freeboard. What this ordinance amendment does is simply clarifies that not only does the lowest finished floor need to be elevated to that 1 foot above or that freeboard, but it also requires the mechanicals and the utilities to be elevated. This is something that was caught with the community rating system, which is our CRS program that was developed by FEMA. So that does give a discount to citizens of Watertown that are needing flood insurance. We are a Class 8, and a prerequisite to maintain that Class 8 within the CRS program does require that the machinery and equipment must also be elevated to 1 foot above the base flood elevation, in addition to what we already have, the lowest finished floor being elevated to 1 foot above. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. This is a first reading, so it's time for the council to vet this proposal. So any questions or comments, council? Councilman Danforth.
So if I have a house with a basement, the basement, if it's finished, needs to be, the floor of that needs to be 1 foot above?
Yes, for habitable space, I believe that's correct.
Sorry, Councilman Beeler.
Thank you, Mayor. Any repercussions at all with sump pumps? Is there anything that would change with those?
Not that I'm aware of with this particular ordinance.
Councilman Paulson.
Would this affect any current applicant or people who have Walmarts?
I don't believe so. I think we would start this moving forward on new projects and such.
Any further questions? I actually have a question. Is there a definition for substantially improved? Because it says the elevation has to meet this requirement if it's newly constructed, substantially improved, or reconstructed due to substantial damage. So what is substantially improved? Because I could envision someone's house
Yes.
having an addition.
Yes, definitely. The substantial improvement clause is something I believe that it's developed by FEMA, and it is more than 50% of the assessed or market value. So someone would have their option of showing an appraisal for their market value, or we can get an estimate off of what shows on the tax roll. So that'd be that 50% rule.
Okay, thank you.
So someone would be allowed to make up to 50% of improvements without complying fully with the provisions of the ordinance.
Councilman Tupper.
I do have one question. So let's say I got a finished basement existing. Now I want to put an addition on that's 55%. Do I have to bring the existing back above that, or just the new? See where I'm coming from there?
That does get tricky. I think we would use that 50% of the overall valuation. If it was less than that, I believe that's where you'd be allowed to go ahead and have the addition. If I'm understanding that correctly, and Justin Peterson is also a certified, well, he is a certified floodplain administrator, and he may be able to help if you have any other knowledge of that, but that's what I think we would be using.
Would you concur with that, Justin?
If I understand your question correctly, you're wondering if the basement would have to be upgraded when you do
The old existing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If they went over the 50%,
I believe it would apply to the whole structure.
okay, thank you.
Councilman Danforth.
Thank you, Randy. That was a question exactly that I had. But is that issue of, do we have an option on that in our ordinance language, or is that a FEMA mandated?
I believe that's pretty much FEMA mandated. We do have a variance process, but it's a pretty strict process to go through. So yeah, it is, there really has to be some kind of hardship or unique situation involved, and there's a criteria for that. So there is an outlet relief valve, if you will. However, this is very typical and part of the FEMA requirements, and also the requirements to be in the CRS program.
My concern with that is we have a large area of our community that is in that flood zone that are the older homes that we want reinvestment in. And I think the way it's written right now, today's costs could very easily prohibit that from happening. And I would hate to see that happen. So if there was a way that we could potentially grandfather in the existing site and anything new, then if it's a new portion of the structure, meaning not replacement of windows, things like that. But in addition, per se, which there is foundation and such, where that would be required to be to the terms within this ordinance language. I'm concerned that as we need more affordable housing, and we have areas that those homes are being remodeled, reconditioned, added on to. I'm concerned that's going to prohibit that from happening. It's going to make things very difficult for those people in those areas.
We actually just looked at one the other day that would be an example of that. So definitely that is one of the tough things. There is that relief valve in the ordinance currently. We certainly can look into that and see if there's anything else that the city could do without compromising the CRS status or putting us out of compliance with FEMA. But we certainly could do that research and see if there are any other options. With this particular ordinance amendment, our hope is that it can go forward so we can finish up the CRS, the recertification visit, just to add this ordinance language in. But we certainly can take a look at that 50% and see if there are other communities or if there are ways to work with that.
Councilman Vilhauer.
I just want to make sure I understand what we are doing, because relative to the structure itself, we just recently passed that ordinance, not within the last, year or so. I mean, what this is doing is strictly dealing with mechanicals and utilities now. So, I mean, I'm not opposed to going back and revisiting the entire discussion, but we had this in some length. I don't remember when, but it was within the last year or so. So I just want to make sure that we're aware of what we are addressing with this proposed change.
That is correct. This is just talking about the mechanicals and the utilities also being required, not just the lowest finished floor, but those mechanicals and utilities would also need to be the 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So correct.
Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Stacy, is a Lomar only required in the floodway, or is it also in the floodplain? And then can you kind of give a little detailed explanation as to when someone would apply for one of these?
Sure. So a Lomar, there's a couple different things. The most common one we see would be a Lomar F. That would be when somebody's going to fill the property. So that's typically when we would see that. For a floodway, for any development within the floodway, we would require a no-rise certificate. That would be prepared by an engineer and signed off on, which I understand those are looked at very carefully. So we would look for that no rise if there was anything ever to come in the floodway. And then the Lomar F, if somebody were to be building within the floodplain, and we would look for that 1 foot above that base flood elevation. So, and we do have a number of existing homes that have the Lomar F where they've been filled, and essentially that takes them out of the floodplain for all intents and purposes.
Thank you. Any further questions from the council? Councilman Danforth.
Point of clarification, are we going to look to see if we have some latitude on that? I'm going to look at Amanda at this point, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly look into it and bring that information back for the second reading, but that's not applicable to this particular amendment. What the amendment is dealing with is just the mechanical and utilities. But if you'd like staff to look at the ordinance as a whole, we certainly can.
Personally, I think you can. I think it's really going to prohibit not the redevelopment, but the transitional development in areas of town that we want and need it.
So just for a point of clarification on the 51%, what you're saying is I could invest X amount of dollars into my home on redevelopment, additions, whatever, but unless it raises the assessed value by 51% or more, this doesn't apply. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. You'd be able to do, in some cases, an addition, in some cases, a substantial remodel, if you will, that type of thing, but it's all based back on that. So I think it's sort of FEMA's way of trying to protect the homeowners in some cases. They would really, if somebody's putting in a substantial improvement, then they would really want to see everything elevated accordingly. So it's to help with repetitive losses as well. But again, it does in some instances, if your appraised or your assessed value is fairly low, then it does make it tough to have the remodels and fix up a house. So,
Thank you. Any further questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you very much, Stacy.
You're
and we
welcome.
will see you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Item E is a report on the bridge inspection to the council. And we'll start by going to our city engineer, Justin Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. Every year, the city has a consultant hired to do bridge inspections. We have a total of 10 bridges in the community, and roughly half of them are inspected every year. So it's a 2-year cycle. This year's consultant, the bridge inspections are performed by Banner Associates, and we have Adam Hansen, the structural department head at Banner, to give a brief summary of what he found.
All right, thank you very much. And just please introduce yourself one more time for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I am Adam Hansen with Banner Associates. I am the structural department head there. I've been with Banner for 17 years, been in engineering for 18 years. Just want to give a brief overview of what I found, what we do for the bridge inspections. So technically, per MBIS standards, this bridge is 20 feet long. Anything less than that is considered short span and does not fall under that criteria. Federal requirement is that they are inspected every 2 years. You've broken yours up into half, so you're doing half of them each year. Some cast-in-place box culverts you can get by on every 4. The DOT pays for 80% of those costs. The city pays for 20%. They are inspected for public safety. The majority of the time, a professional engineer is the one performing the inspection. There are certified inspectors that aren't PEs, but they have a ton of experience. An overview of your bridge system, 10 structures on the list, 5 of them were performed this year. They were on North Lake Drive, 3rd Avenue North, Kemp Avenue, 4th Avenue South, and 20th Avenue, which is the bypass. 3rd Avenue North is the only one with a weight limit on it, no change from last year or from 2 years ago. And that one is currently in design to be replaced. So, as far as repairs and maintenance go, typically, and this is kind of some of the typical stuff that we've seen and you see on a lot of older bridges, is some of the railings aren't currently up to standard. Signage on the bridges. Got just a few pictures in here. The one on Kemp, the railing is fine, but you get off to the edge and it starts to fall off a little bit. This one up in the upper right-hand side is the one on North Lake Drive. The guardrail isn't up to current standards. On the end of the bridges, currently require object markers. A lot of the older bridges do not have those. When they were constructed in the 40s and 50s, that was not the same standards that are constructed today. And then the one on 4th is the one in the lower. That one's more typical of what you'd see and is compliant with current standards. The bridges that were currently being monitored is the culvert on North Lake Drive. There is some concrete deterioration on the ends of the culvert. There's nothing that affects the roadway surface itself under the traffic pass, but it is starting to corrode, and I got some pictures on that. And then the 3rd Avenue North, which is currently in design to be replaced. So here's a little bit of the concrete deterioration on the ends of that culvert. Like I said, there's nothing that affects the roadway. A culvert is extremely redundant, so it takes a lot of section loss before you end up with load restrictions and that type of thing. But in the recommendations, this is something to consider getting in the budget and starting to plan for a replacement on this. And then just an update on the 3rd Avenue one. You can kind of see the condition in here. It is very similar to where it was 2 years ago and 4 years ago, but that condition isn't very good. So it is very good that it is in plan to be replaced. As far as replacement goes, the DOT does have their bridge improvement grants out there. Start with that is a preliminary engineering grant where they go through the hydraulics, figure out exactly what type of structure would need to be replaced in there. For the North Lake Drive, it already being a box culvert likely would go back to a box culvert, but they would size it, figure out hydraulically exactly how much flow it needs to take. For that preliminary engineering grant, the DOT would pay, it can be up to 80%, 20%, similar to the bridge inspections. But you have to apply. It needs to be a certain structure with a certain rating. The score on this would fall potentially in the lower portion of the list. That score can kind of vary, and where their cutoff lines can vary, but you don't know unless you apply. So that application process typically happens around August. And then you can go further with it being, with that one being a box culvert, the chances of full replacement grant is not likely on those, just because the impacts aren't, and the costs aren't quite as high on a box culvert as it is on a bridge. I mean, the bridge, you start getting into the millions of dollars versus hundreds of thousands. So a lot of times it's tougher to get the full replacement grant, but you do see the preliminary engineering grants, they give out a lot of more of those, and so you can at least figure out what needs to be done and get a plan going forward on that. So with that, any questions that I may be able to answer?
Thank you very much. Open it up for questions from the council. Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, we're still waiting for a Corps of Engineers study for flood issues that we have in the community. Would that make any changes to the design that we're currently thinking about replacing these bridges with? Is that possible? And
I'm a structural guy, not a hydraulics guy. Those guys are very specialized in what they do.
Okay, well, the question I've got is,
yep,
if the Corps comes out with a plan, could that change what we're doing here for bridge reconstruction?
I believe most of the time the design for hydraulics is set on 10-year flows and 25-year flows and overtopping. And a lot of times that's calculated off to the side of the Corps engineers. That the information that the Corps uses to determine that may change some of what we're designing around, but I'm not 100% sure if what they are saying will dictate specifically what the information that they are using may change, may change exactly what we're designing around as well, but we're not relying specifically on the information that they're providing.
Follow-up question, Mayor.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So are we in communication with them? Will we be in communication with them as we do these?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
On any federal waterway, we are in communication with the Corps of Engineers.
Councilman Tupper.
Just one quick question. North Lake Drive, is that the one that's like Pesca Lodge?
Yep.
That's what I thought. Thank
exactly.
You. And the one on Camp Avenue still as good as it's ever been?
It is. There's some cosmetic with the concrete bands across there. Right now, it's just cosmetic. With that being it's a nice looking bridge. It is something that will, if at a minimum, just for aesthetics reasons, to start looking at some maintenance issues on the concrete itself and tuck pointing of the rock and
kind of amazing how that one and the one on 3rd Avenue are both WPA projects built at about the same time, and the one is the worst bridge we got, and the one is one of the nicest ones we got. So.
It's amazing how that can happen.
Do you have personal knowledge on that? Councilman Danforth.
Mr. Hans, I got a question for you.
Okay.
From our standpoint, one of the things that we're obviously concerned about is public safety, and that's certainly where you would put weight limits on, et cetera. But just, if you could go through, if you would, what is it that gets a bridge to have some type of limitations on it, and at what point does the engineering say no? And what I'm looking at is I know there was something a while ago, I think it was in the paper after we had approved our budget, and there were some questions and comments about the 3rd Avenue Bridge, and it should have been replaced umpteen years ago. Just because it looks bad doesn't mean it's unsafe.
Correct.
So if you could, for those people that had concerns of safety on our bridges, if you could just take a second and explain that process, and that ideally, stuff can happen. But we certainly try to design around that or plan around that. But if you would, please.
Well, for that structure, for it being concrete, we're looking for stress, which in concrete results in cracks. So we're monitoring those cracks, we're measuring those cracks. The steel reinforcement in that will start to yield before the concrete. So that gives us some indication that something's going on that is not intended to be. The other thing we're looking for is significant section loss. There is one column in there that goes from its original shape down to basically the rebar cage that's in there. However, that's one column out of 5 in each bent, and there is redundancy built into that structure that if that column were to fail, the bridge likely would not fail. Whereas 35W, one failure, the whole thing came down. So that is one thing that goes into the bridge inspections, is we are looking at redundancy. And if there's redundancy, you can get by with one member getting a little further along than what can happen if you don't have that. Where you've got a single truss on each side of the bridge and that's all that's holding that bridge up, that now becomes there is no redundancy at all in that bridge. One failure in any truss and it will fail. So that's where then we start looking at scour underneath. That's erosion of the dirt around the piling or under the footings. It's those type of things that we're looking for, and typically we'll come in an emergency situation as well if there's a significant flood event to make sure that the scour is not compromised something underneath.
So we put the weight limits on to help any further deterioration, but if there is a point at which there is a public safety concern, that bridge would be shut off. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That would be considered a significant finding. We would notify the city engineer immediately, and the street department would be out there ideally that day with road closure signs if we found something that significant.
Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Hans, just a question. Did I hear you say, was it the 20th Avenue bypass bridge?
Yep.
Part of I know we've had some issues with that bridge. That's a relatively new bridge. We've had some issues since new, really, I think. Where are we at with that bridge, if you have anything to comment on?
There was an epoxy chip seal done prior to the previous inspection cycle, which was 2 years ago, so it was done 3 years ago or so. I know at that time they were still waiting for, with that bridge being pre-stressed concrete, the pre-stressing in there causes the girders to camber up a little more, and that takes a significant amount of time. So they were waiting to make sure that all the camber was up and everything had relaxed completely, and then to address the ride issues going over the top of it. That's the primary issue on that one, is the camber. The multi-span causes it to be a little bit of a roller coaster going over.
Okay, so it's still a work in progress,
yes.
Is what I'm hearing from you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. But not a safety issue.
No.
Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson, for being here. This is your first year doing bridge inspections for Watertown, is that correct?
Correct.
So do you look at previous bridge inspections?
Yes.
It sounds like you have.
Yep.
So the findings in those are pretty much the same from
Yes.
a couple years ago,
Yep.
is what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and we also have one of our guys on staff did them for Austin Engineering a number of years prior to that. So I had his memory to go back on as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the council? Thank you very much, Mr. Hanson.
Yep.
Item F is an approval for resolution number 22-01, an acceptance of a development improvements to Willow Creek Village Addition installed by J&J Earthworks on behalf of Glacial Lakes Capital. For more information, we will go to our city engineer, Justin Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll share my screen here. Just so this is the area that we're looking at. This is formal acceptance of the infrastructure along 22nd Street Southeast and 2nd Avenue Southeast. It includes the acceptance of the roadway, water, sewer, storm sewer, curb and gutter for city ownership and maintenance.
Thank you very much. Don't need to open a public hearing, but is anyone here to testify on this? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion from the council to approve the resolution. Made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Vilhauer. Any questions or comments, council? All right, hearing none, the motion is to approve the resolution. Councilman Paulson is recusing himself from this vote, but all those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item G is the approval of resolution number 22-02 for revisions of the engineering design standards. We'll go back to our city engineer, Justin Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. The engineering design standards were originally passed in March of 2020, I believe. And each year we've done a review of them to provide some clarity as questions come up from developers. I just want to briefly describe a few of these changes. In Chapter 2, it's just clarifying that deviations of engineering design standards should be shown on the plans when they submit them. Chapter 3 and 4, just some minor punctuation spelling. Chapter 5 extends more distance between the corners and the driveways, clarifies the shared driveway widths for duplexes, and allows other alternative materials for culverts and driveways. Chapter 6 requires a geotech report for roadways. It's something that we've had the option of doing, we've been regularly doing. Just kind of puts it as standard. Chapter 8, excuse me, the clarifies that the typical street sections are the basis of design, as approved by the city engineer. So residential street widths are the typical street section is 39 foot 4 inches, and so that's what we recommend as standard. It's a question that came up, and we just wanted to clarify it, that was the intent. Probably the biggest change in the design standards is with cul-de-sacs requiring snow storage. One of the highest cost to the city dealing with cul-de-sacs is snow removal, and so providing the developer to provide space, whether it's an easement or a small lot, just to provide storage of that snow, and it's equivalent to about 7,000 square feet, roughly. That's the size of the cul-de-sacs, a typical cul-de-sac. Adds a turnaround detail. Chapter 9 is just some cleanup stuff, changing DNR to DANR, reflect the names, and some policies that we do go through now, just clarifying things. Chapter 11 is some more clarification about the master drainage plan, and then formatting. And Chapter 14 is request for closeout documents.
Thank you very much. We'll open for questions from the council. Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I just have a comment on the cul-de-sacs. The new requirement is going to be met with not very happy people when they're designing this. As a developer is going to come in and look at this as you're raising the cost of development with this because you're not getting as much property to use as your own and sell. I just wanted to point that out. I'm not necessarily raising too much of a red flag, but I just wanted to point it out that is going to be talked about every time someone brings in a new design for a cul-de-sac, is that's raising the cost of development. And I know that's been a big discussion in general, and there's a lot of other factors into that. But I just wanted to point that out, that we're going to be met with some restriction there.
Councilman Danforth.
Do I understand then if I have this cul-de-sac, that there's literally going to be a lot, a piece of land there that we're going to move snow onto, and so you got all these houses, 3, 4, 5 houses around or whatever it is, and then we're going to have one lot that's just a pile of snow? Is that what I'm hearing?
That is one option, yes. And there's locations in town that has that option already, where there's snow lots. Another option would be providing, if you can kind of imagine, an easement in between the houses to allow snow to be essentially piled behind the houses. That's also an option. It's just it's written in a way to have some flexibility so that the developer can come up with a plan that works for what they're trying to do. Again, the cul-de-sacs, it's been an issue with just time and cost to clean those out from the street department, and so this is a suggestion that we'd like to make a change, that if there is a cul-de-sac that at least the developer provides some option for the snow.
Follow-up, Councilman?
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. Is there a way that we could, for homeowners within cul-de-sacs, come up with some annual fee or the taxation on that site to be different, and then just take care of the snow versus, I don't think we want a lot with snow on it in a new development area. I can't imagine we do, or to push it in between houses and have easements. That seems like Councilman Paulson said, number one, drives their costs up, but number two, I'm just not sure that's what we want to be doing with the snow. We get a real bad snow year, think about that. I would rather find a way to have some charge there that, because you got a cul-de-sac and those expenses are higher, if that's what the case is, then that homeowner bears that slightly additional cost on an annual basis for snow removal. Or we bite the bullet and say, we're all in this together and we bear the cost. I think that's, any of them, in my opinion, is a better solution than having empty lots or pushing snow between buildings. I'm really concerned with that.
Councilman Tupper.
City engineer, has this been addressed in other communities in the same way, or, I mean, kind of there's got to be some background where the thought came from, so.
To my knowledge, it hasn't been addressed in South Dakota. I did look at some ordinances in Colorado and Alaska, and they do it. They have this option, but they also have an option where it's essentially a wider boulevard, and push snow up onto the boulevard is another option as well. Just trying to find a solution for what we do here that potentially could work.
I would tend to have to agree with Councilman Danforth that I think this is, The last thing I'd want to see is a big snow pile in between two houses, because what's that going to create when it starts melting? And then just the aesthetics of it. I mean, I would agree that if some way we can assess that property owner, then that would be a more fair way of doing it, but I don't know if that's possible.
Councilman Vilhauer.
I've got a question not on this specific issue, but just in general, because these are relatively new. Mayor, you and I sat on the committee where these came out of, along with, I see Mr. Lawrence in the audience, developers around town, along with some city staff eventually, worked on this at length a couple of years ago. I guess and then we as a council passed these, it's what, like 300 pages, something like that, these engineering design standards. I remember as we were having these meetings, as we asked a question to a developer, what is needed, and one of the first things we heard back is, we need some engineering design standards. So now that we've got them in place, I guess I'm asking, are they being used? Are they being well received? Who does use them? I guess kind of give me a summary as far as what we did a couple years ago, and are they accomplishing what we hope to do so?
I would say yes, they're working. At our DRT meetings, we use these almost exclusively, not say exclusively, but we use these to make comments about what certain plans. And these changes that we listed here just came from things that have come up and just clarities that we'd like to make it well known to all developers so that there's no surprises.
So the developers do use these or are aware of these as they go through designing a project?
Yes.
I see some head nodding for those that are in that industry, so thank you.
Thank you. And just to piggyback on something Councilman Vilhauer said, this is something that we have been working on with city staff for quite some time in response to concerns that we have heard from developers in this town. As we all know, one of the biggest costs of business is uncertainty, and development is especially so. And so having these design standards out front that you can look at ahead of time and get those answers before you even start is one of the best ways for developers to come forward with a project that will get city approval and save time once that happens. So that was the effort. It's an ongoing effort. It's one that we will commit ourselves to never being done with, and always be responsive to the developers in town and the people who want that. Councilman Paulson, did you have something first?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just to clarify my comments a little bit too, I think that there is a better option than requiring, like Councilman Danforth said, a lot just for snow. I think that there are better options of drainage easements and different things like that already exist, but you can work around it. I guess I would personally ask city staff to relook at exactly what that means, because obviously I get the snow removal side 100%. I know that there's added cost to that, but at the same time, we're allowing them as a city, we're approving those plats, and I don't think that the developers should be necessarily on the hook for a lot of those issues that we're approving. But I guess that's where I wanted to clarify a little bit.
Thank you. Councilman Danforth.
Just a point of clarification again. Is this, the issue of the snow, is that new to this language, or is it a clarification of language and the requirements, Justin, that you've called out?
It would be new.
Okay.
The intent was trying to solve an issue with the snow storage, because cul-de-sacs, developers tend to like cul-de-sacs, and we do allow it as a city, but it does come at an additional cost, and so we're trying to balance those two things, and this is one idea I guess we came up with.
Mayor, if I can, just final. I'm a firm believer in our design standards. So don't get me wrong at all. I'm a absolute believer in them, but they got to be the right design standards. And I question this one. This is really bothersome to me as to if this is what our finished product's gonna look like. And, you know, it's great if we had global warming and we don't get a whole lot of snow, but if we do get years where we have a lot of snow, that's not what we want in our neighborhoods. I can't imagine, you know, pushing snow between two houses to their backyards and creating a bunch of little piles back there with these easements, or having an empty lot in the middle of a little neighborhood area and pile it up with snow. So, because then who maintains that? Do we have to mow it? Is that our lot, or whose lot is that? So we got to mow it now, right? And take care of weeds or whatever we all do. And I really question whether we're saving any money in the end. But I think the snow thing needs to get looked at. I really do. And I don't agree with what's been laid out, personally.
Our city manager, Amanda Mack, would like to comment.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to make a suggestion that the motion potentially be amended to approve the design standard changes and remove the cul-de-sac language until we can vet it a little further as staff.
I think that would be an appropriate idea, as that seems to be the sticking point. Kristen, can we agree on specific language, or Amanda, how would you? Let's just say, okay. The chair will entertain a motion to, okay, first off, I actually need a motion. I apologize, I messed up. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution? Made by Councilman Danforth, seconded by Councilman Tupper. So that's on the approval of the resolution. Now we can amend the resolution to, the chair will now entertain a motion to amend the resolution to accept the engineering design standards, striking all language regarding cul-de-sacs.
That is exactly my motion.
Okay. So that is the, so.
Snow storage.
Snow storage or snow storage with cul-de-sacs?
I think snow storage would be appropriate. It's the only time it's mentioned, so.
Would that be, okay. So the amendment will be to approve the design or the engineering design standards with the understanding of striking snow storage. Is it snow storage or snow removal? Snow storage. Snow storage. Don't put that on the radio, Steve. So that is the amendment. We have an amendment proposed by Councilman Danforth, seconded by Councilman Paulson. Any comments on the amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we are on the approval of the engineering design standards as amended. Any comments or questions on that? The motion is to approve the engineering design standards as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item H is the approval of a senior planner position in the Community Development Department. We'll go to our city manager, Amanda Mack, for more information.
Thank you, Mayor. This position, this action creates what we are calling our senior planner position. In looking at the level of work and the workload that is coming through the Community Development Office currently and what we anticipate in the future, we believe there is a need for a more senior level position. This is also an effort to provide our existing employees in the community development and I guess across the organization an opportunity for potential advancement and to continue to build and hone their skills. This position would require 4 to 5 years of previous experience, certified floodplain management certification, as well as AICP, certified planner certification. We had this job description graded by our consultants, and it came in at a grade 165 or 170, and so we're recommending approval of this position. If approved, the goal would be to move our current urban planner into this position and leave the urban planner position vacant until such time that it would warrant filling it. I'll entertain any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. The chair will entertain a motion for the approval of this position.
So moved.
Made by Councilman Vilhauer, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Any questions or comments, Council? Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager, Mac. So you said that this was graded at a 165 or 170. Is there, so did they leave it up to you, or was there certifications
So
associated with that?
there's a little bit of discretion in that. Some of it is related to certifications, and some of it is related to the number of direct reports that this person would be managing. So the goal right away would be to have this person manage a summer intern. And then look at some of the other positions within that division to see what might make sense. Also, as we look at our watershed coordinators retiring, that might be a natural position to bring under the senior planner, given the floodplain management aspect of the job. So that hasn't been fully fleshed out yet. I would anticipate, if this all came to fruition, moving our urban planner to a grade 165, and then once the AICP was obtained, bump up to 170.
Thank you. Any further questions, council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the position. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item J is the approval of agreement with RSCS LLC to provide consulting services related to the ice arena project. Our city manager, Amanda Mack, has more information for us.
Thank you, Mayor. Right before Christmas, a small group of us that are participating in the ice arena project met with Tom Betty and Dick Strasberg, as well as 3 potential consultants. Really what this is to help us decide how we are going to manage the facility once it's built. Like I said, we interviewed 3 different potential consultants and landed on RSCS based on their availability, their experience within the ice market, and overall cost of their proposal. You'll see that they are going to work with myself and Terry Kelly and the Parks Department to complete the business plan for ice arena operations, job descriptions for the ice arena manager, help us decide if we're going to hire someone internally or do an external. They'll help make recommendations on that and also provide some staff training. So I'd recommend approval with RSCS for a total cost of $10,000, which would come out of our bond that's been issued.
Thank you. We are looking for a motion to approve the agreement made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Danforth. Any comments or questions, council? Councilman Danforth.
Amanda, so one of the possibilities might be that we contract the management of that out, correct?
Correct.
How does that work then? Would we have city employees in the building? Because my understanding is contracted services cannot supervise or manage city employees.
Right. So, we'd have to work through that. I would imagine, if that was the path we went down, it would be a similar setup to the way that the golf course is operated, where we have an independent contractor. They handle the hiring of their staff. They pay their staff. And then, we just do a lump sum to them. I don't know that that's the track that we'll end up on, but it certainly is a possibility.
Councilman Bueller.
Mike, Councilman Danforth, I maybe could respond to that question as well. We really don't know to what capacity that this organization will work completely at this point. It could be a consulting program for a period of months. We could retain them for a long period of time, but we're looking probably at a hybrid where we use city people to manage the facility. We use them as consultants for maybe event management. They may have some input on a junior team if we go in that direction. We're still trying to sort out the details as to who's going to do what. That's my understanding as I've gone through this process with these folks. So we're early into this, and we're kind of feeling it out to see, one other thing that's really going to be important. I think Amanda had alluded to the fact that we may look at an outside resource, human resources for managing the facility in that regard. But I personally don't see this as a full-time management of the whole facility. I can see this as a marketing, consulting, event management, and helping us. This would be a key component, I think, is for whoever in their organization it is comes and trains people that we use in different capacities to run this arena. And I was really impressed with these folks. I mean, they've got I think 70 years of experience between the two guys that are the principals in that company. So I don't know if that helps at all. But we need to sit with the Park and Rec Department, make a list of the things that we think they'll be responsible for, and make a list of the things that we think the consultants may be responsible for. So that's where we're at. Thanks.
Councilman Vilhauer.
I guess I would just weigh in to endorse totally what Amanda and Bruce has said. These folks definitely know what they're doing. They've been down this road many, many times, and they're gonna guide us as far as who and what is done by whom. As a good example, something that they could help us do that maybe we don't want to get involved in or haven't got the experience is actually scheduling ice time, for example. That's something that they might be able to help us in. So, you know, kind of going into this, we don't know what we don't know at this point. So we're getting involved in something totally new here. But these folks have been down this road, very accommodating to us. To me, head and shoulders over the other interviews that we took over the course of a couple days. That I'm excited in working with these folks. I think they'll really get us on the right path, as whatever that may be.
Thank you, Councilman Paulson.
Just a quick comment. I do think it is very vital to sit down with the people who are running the current ice arena within our organization, because they work a lot day and night making sure that the ice is ready. They're the ones that have operated for years, and they know what our current facility needs, but obviously the consultant can bring a lot of different things to what a two-sheet ice arena is going to show the differences, but our current operators are very key to that. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you very much. Any further comments from the council? With that, the chair would just like to say that this is another example where Watertown is, where we as a city council, we're committed to doing this right. We hear that from the public very often. We have shown that we are committed to doing that with the construction of the facility, and with this we are showing the public that we are committed to doing it with the ongoing operations of the facility as well, because that's a very integral part to this as well. So we're very committed to doing this right from the start to the finish, and all the way that finish line is going to be decades out. So that's just what we're trying to do here. With that, the chair will go to a vote on the approval of the agreement. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item K is the approval of a MOU with Stony Point Investments regarding a future TIF. We will go to our city attorney, Matt Roby, for more information.
Thank you, Mayor. In April of this year, the city created a tax increment financing district, TIF number 14, that encompassed the Stony Point area and essentially encompassed the first phase of the developer's project that you see going up as we speak. The developer is now contemplating a second phase of development in that Stony Point area that would potentially include a hotel, convention center, additional condos, commercial retail space, and entertainment amenities. And so what they're seeking here is an MOU from the council, essentially giving them some level of comfort that the city will entertain another TIF when the time comes. And what it does, it allows the developer to go out and talk to potential financing partners, potential tenants, etc., to give them that level of comfort that the city will approve that TIF. And then when the time comes, we'd work with them and the WDC to get the TIF on the agenda and approved.
Thank you very much. Chair doesn't have to open a public hearing, but I know that there is someone here who would possibly be able to answer questions if they come up, and I just want to recognize that that is still open for the council. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the MOU, made by Councilman Vilhauer, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Any questions or comments from the council? Councilman Danforth.
I hate to always be the one here, but there's no surprise, is it? But my question is this, is I know when it comes to funding that we cannot commit to future fundings and take that option away from a future council. Considering that, not knowing the timeframes for this phase 2, how does this council make that commitment? Because 2 years from this last summer, we're going to have another election, correct? And we're going to have different council members, Christ, I believe we are potentially. How do we make that commitment to an MOU like this and take that out of some future council's hands?
Mayor, if I might.
Please, Mr. Roby.
So this MOU is not legally binding. So in that respect, as far as binding future councils, it has zero effect to legally bind future councils. Now, you could argue from a political perspective, it would certainly be more difficult for a future council to turn down a TIF having had this MOU approved in the past. But legally, there would be no reason a future council couldn't decide that when the time comes that they're no longer interested in approving a TIF in this area.
Any follow-up, Councilman?
Well, I don't. I mean, with that, it certainly makes it more palatable from my standpoint of supporting this. But I'm not sure if I'm the developer, you know, how far I take that. In what we've done in the relative recent past, it seemed like it would make sense, the TIF. But again, I don't know who's going to be sitting in these seats 2 years from now.
Mayor, one thing
So I again, from my perspective, I'm just, that's my concern is, and Matt, to know that it's non-binding is helpful to me, knowing that the future council can make their decision. But there's the but side, and it's sitting right there.
What did you call me?
He just call you a name.
What did you just call
Well,
me?
Mike.
Without any comments about the potential testifier, what we're going to do, you know, Mr. Lawrence is in the attendance tonight, and he was the person who I recognized, and I will grant latitude to speak, but first I want the council to conduct their business as proceeded. So going back to City Attorney Roby, did you want to answer Councilman Danforth's question?
Yeah, I would just add one thing, and Mike may mention this, but as it's spelled out in the MOU, that this particular developer, at least at this time, as it's spelled out in the MOU, is not requesting what we call upfront funding for this TIF. And so essentially what they are saying that they'll be asking for is just that approval of a TIF district, and it ends up being what we call a pass-through TIF. So any increment revenue that's generated comes to the city from the state, and we just pass it through to the developer, and they do their own financing essentially. And so that's maybe that's an additional thing to consider, I guess, that makes you a little more comfortable approving the MOU versus if we were promising some chunk of money in a couple of years. We're not doing that.
Mr. Lawrence, I will give you a chance to speak, but Councilman Bueller had raised his intention to.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Bueller.
In response to Councilman Danforth, I got to believe that we in the past have approved TIFs where we've had changes in leadership on the council. I mean, I think we've probably done that more than once. I believe that's happening, and I agree with what the city attorney is saying too, that we're not committing specifically funding to those TIF projects. And so I think, I don't think this is anything new. I think this is something we've done probably more than once. Thanks.
Councilman Vilhauer?
I guess I just like to say in general concerning, because we've had a lot of TIFs coming before us in the last couple of years, and I think a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of just flat out not understanding them. But we had a pretty good work session here about a month ago, and the name slips my mind. Chris, I'm looking at you. What was the gentleman's name? Yeah, Toby Morris. who kind of guided us through use of TIFs, and we asked them specifically, from your opinion and experience, is our use of TIFs appropriate? And there wasn't a whole lot of reservation on his part saying that absolutely. So I think they are a valuable tool in the toolbox that I don't think we should be hesitant to make available to a developer that wants to take on a risky project. I hear your concern, Mike, about binding future council, but like Matt explained, this is going to be a pass-through TIF, is our understanding, that is not going to be requiring outlay of city dollars when the time comes, if we do in fact approve the TIF. So anyway, that's just my comment as far as our use of TIFs in general in the past and hopefully going forward.
Mr. Lawrence, would you like to speak? And if so, just please identify yourself.
Yeah, Mike Lawrence. I work with Bob Drake. Bob couldn't be here tonight, so he sent me. I agree with what Mr. Danforth says, and I wish you all well on your re-elections. But yeah, what we're looking for, and Toby kind of went through this on his thing. It's just a handshake. It gives us a better feeling about spending a whole bunch more money trying to get this thing engineered and figuring out where we're going to land, working with financing. So we're looking for some positivity from the city saying, hey, we're behind you in this, and so we can go forward. And again, we aren't looking for dollars. It is a pass through. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the MOU. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We are done with our agenda for tonight. Any old business? Any new business? Councilman Bueller was just waving by. Sorry. Any new business? Any liaison reports? Any announcements? Councilman Tupper?
I got an announcement, I guess. I'd like to take this time to publicly thank somebody that finished up their job for 18 years last week with a real struggle and passing the hat on to somebody else. But Shar Torgerson led our volunteer center for the past 18 years. And she poured her heart and soul into that. And I know she's going to be strongly missed in the volunteer part of our community. I believe it started with a flood that started the volunteer center, if I remember right. But I worked with Shar on some other projects over the years, and there's nobody in Watertown that probably poured her heart and soul into a job like she did, and those are going to be some big shoes to fill. So I already seen an email today that it's a little harder than what she thought it was going to be. So, but I just want to hats off to her for all the hard work she put in the city of Watertown. So.
Thank you very much. Councilman Vilhauer.
Yes, I'm not sure if this is an announcement or not, but I guess this is where I suggested I go on the agenda. About a year ago, those that were following council actions may remember, and a few of us were actually on the council at that time, put together a committee that looked at reviewing the upcoming, the city manager and the mayor's duties going forward with their change in city governance as of the 1st of July, because we didn't know what we were necessarily getting ourselves into, and we just want to make sure that, do we need to look at clarifying, spelling out, specifying a little more so what city manager and the mayor's duties would entail. Did we need to do something other than what our home rule charter already said? So with that in mind, a number of us met, and the people that were involved at that time were Mayor Holeen, who was not a mayoral candidate at that time, Councilman Bruce Bueller. I was on that, and as well as Councilman Dan Elberson and Councilwoman Beth Manti at that time, along with, we had a lot of guidance from our city attorney, Matt Roby, as we went through this. Well, we met probably half a dozen times. We've got some very detailed minutes, actually. And the upshot of the whole thing resulted in a resolution that we as a council at that time passed. It's resolution 21-22 that we passed back in, it was April 19th, 21 meeting when that resolution was passed. One of the provisions of that resolution, I'll just read part of it. It says, beginning in January of 2022, which is where we are right now, A committee consisting of the deputy mayor and 2 other members of the city council appointed by the deputy mayor shall convene to review and make recommendations to the full city council regarding the roles of mayor and city manager. Well, we are here. I am the deputy mayor. So with that, I'll be reaching out to a couple of you to assist in this, to review where we've come the last 6-7 months now relative to the mayor's duties, the city manager's duties, and give a report back to the council. I guess what I would hope and envision is that we meet a few times, review this. I'm looking at our city attorney. We're going to want your assistance, as well as input from the mayor and the city manager as we go through this, and then report back to the council. Probably the first meeting in February would be my thought as we work through this. So I'll be spearheading this and reaching out to a few of you for some assistance on this. But just an update as to where we were with the results of the committee that met last spring to review this. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is just a result of, we didn't know what we were getting in for. I think it's gone well, but we would like review to make sure that it's going well, and that perhaps if there's any way that we can do it better. Aren't we always looking for ways to make it better? All right. Thank you. Any other further announcements? There's no need to go into executive session tonight. With that, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn, made by Councilman Danforth, seconded by Councilman Bueller. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?